All right, hello, and welcome back to the Broken Business Models podcast. We're your hosts, Ryan and James. And before we get into today's podcast, just a quick disclaimer: nothing in this podcast or any of our other materials should be taken as investment advice. James and I could have positions in any of the stocks we may mention today, and we reserve the right to change those positions at any time. So always make sure to do your own work and consult with a professional before making any investment decision. With that out of the way, the topic of today's podcast is going to be Hyliion. So Hyliion is one of the companies that came out of the 2020 and 2021 SPAC mania. And what their business model is originally they had this electric drivetrain that could be used to retrofit existing traditional vehicles. And so the idea was that you could take any internal combustion engine vehicle and use Hyliion's technology to turn it into a hybrid electric vehicle. So that was their original business model that they operated with for a few years after going public via SPAC. However, since 2023, they transitioned their business model into selling this new type of electricity generator called the Carno, which is a kind of new technology for a power generator. And the idea for this behind this Carno generator is that it supposedly can be more efficient than other traditional electric generator technologies, and can also supposedly be used with a variety of different fuels, including some clean fuels like hydrogen potentially. And so the target users of these Carno generators, originally the idea was for them to be used to power their hybrid electric trucks, their semi trucks, so that you could have it basically take the place of a battery. Instead, you'd have this Carno generator. When they wound down their electric drivetrain business, they then pivoted to trying to sell this Carno, market this Carno for locally deployed energy generation. So think of any application where you have like a building doing some like commercial operations where you cannot afford to lose power at any time. You might have these generators, or if you want to, supposedly they're so efficient that you could even use these generators as your prime energy, and it'd be even cheaper than using grid electricity. Secondarily, they also market these generators because they're small and modular to mobile power generation. So think about like vehicles or boats and naval ships and things of that nature. Taking a look at the financials, so Hyliion has never been able to generate any meaningful revenue, and they've been burning cash every single quarter since they went public. That being said, over the past several quarters, since they changed their business model to selling the Carno generator, they went on a cost-cutting. They implemented many cost-cutting measures and laid off a lot of their employees from their electric drivetrain business, and were able to cut their cash burn down to about $15 million per quarter. And this also contributed to their ability to actually do a stock buyback with their cash that they got from the SPAC transaction in the later part of in 2024, and that also coincided with their stock price surging into the end of 2024. And so they don't make any revenue. They're burning cash, but they have been able to cut their cash burn significantly and have several years of runway left. Now, as far as the company's future prospects and their current situation, they reported their first revenue in a long time last quarter. That was a small $1.5 million R&D services revenue that they got from the Navy. Basically, the Navy wanted to kind of do some tests and test out this new technology for some potential use cases that the Navy might have. Other than that, they claimed that they were able to deliver some of their Carno units to early adopter customers in the early part of 2025, and they say that they expect to be able to deliver several more units throughout the rest of the year. And so they tell investors that they have a multi-year backlog of interest, which we will talk about later on in the podcast. Why that's a dubious claim. And also, even if they can sell a few units, uh, it's almost implausible the idea that they would be able to make any money from them. So with that background, I'll kick it over to you, James, to get into more detail about Hyliion.
Yeah. So one thing I would also add is that we actually published a video about Hyliion about a year ago. The link is in the description below. And in that video, we went into great detail and debunked a lot of Hyliion's claims. So, as Ryan claimed previously, they claim that their Carno generator is so efficient that you could use it as your prime power. So that means you could use it for powering your home or powering a business, and they claim that it's so efficient that it would be cheaper than buying electricity from the grid. Now, we went into great detail in our previous video explaining why that's complete BS, and there's zero chance that their Carno generator can generate electricity for cheaper than than what you could buy from the grid. So if you want, I guess, more of a deep dive on the technology, the technical aspects of the Carno generator, make sure to watch our previous video, which is linked in the description below. For this video, we're going to mostly be talking about the commercial updates in their 2025 guidance and outlook. So, and then also before continuing on, just a quick reminder to anyone who doesn't already know, we have a website called differentiatedanalytics.com where we provide a whole host of resources for investors, including our premium short selling research. So we identify companies which we believe to be fraudulent or overvalued, and we publish detailed research reports which are available to our paid members of Differentiated Analytics. So if that at all sounds interesting to you, make sure to sign up for a subscription to Differentiated Analytics. The link is in the description below. Also, if you if you join and become a member, you get access to our private Discord channel where we talk about stocks, and you can also recommend video ideas. And for a limited time only, if you use the promo code WSM50 at checkout, you can get a 50% discount on your subscription. So go to differentiatedanalytics.com. Now, so as Ryan explained previously, they delivered their first units of they claim to have delivered their first units of the Carno generator in early 2025, and they expect to deliver a total of 10 Carno generators by mid 2025. However, it's important to note that these deliveries are their so-called early adopter deliveries. So what does that mean? What does it mean to sell early adopter Carno? Well, this is a quote from the company. Early adopter customer units aim to validate Carno generators' performance against customer requirements, with customer feedback helping to refine and enhance the system, as well as to address any performance issues that may arise. Some of the units will remain at Hyliion's Cincinnati facility for further testing and validation, as outlined in customer contracts. So the Carno generator, it's not even ready yet. It still needs to undergo testing and validation. And they claim that they're delivering these units to early adopters, but a lot of them aren't even being delivered. They are remaining at Hyliion's own facility to continue testing. So they're saying that they are delivering them, but by their own admission, they're not even ready yet. So that's these early adopter deliveries aren't really real deliveries, and we'll get into more detail on the next slide. And then they also said this is from Hyliion themselves have said this. For initial deliveries, some features, functions, and performance characteristics will not be available at launch. We will be making further enhancements to the system as we continue with the product testing and validation, field trials, and as we receive customer feedback. So this Carno, the early adopter Carno generators, basically right now, the Carno generator is still in beta mode. It is not even ready. It still needs to be tested and validated, and it doesn't even have all the features that it's supposed to have. So it's not even complete yet. That's why they call these deliveries early adopter deliveries. But as we'll see, it actually gets even worse. So yeah, again, as Ryan said, they were supposed to begin these so-called deliveries in 2024, but that was pushed back to 2025. They blamed supply chain issues and technical issues, and also they had to outsource some of the components to a contract manufacturer. So they're not even able to build the whole thing themselves. They had to outsource some of it. Now, here are some more quotes from the company. So Hyliion says that While operating the generator, we identified traces of residual metal powder that were slowly being released within the system. The powder was traced to parts that weren't sufficiently cleaned following printing. So these Carnot generators are made via 3D printing. So that's why they talk about following printing. They have a 3D metal printer, and because the way that the 3D printing of metal works is you get powdered metal and you have basically a laser that melts the powdered metal into whatever shape you want. That's how 3D printing of metal works. But apparently it's not really working that well because there's still powdered metal left in parts of the system, and that basically makes it faulty. So they can't even make them properly. So parts for initial generators have undergone additional cleaning and will be used as we work on further enhancements to facilitate improvements in performance and metal powder removal. So yeah, they're basically admitting that they can't even make them properly, and they're still trying to figure out how to make improvements so that they can actually make them. So it's a very bad situation. As we deliver early adopter customer units through approximately the middle of the year, we will also use the time to continue testing and improving the generator and validating operating parameters. Later in the year, we expect customer deployments to continue, including delivery of units associated with R&D services. So first, in the first half of the year, they're going to have selling these. They have these early adopter deliveries, which, as we explained, they're not even real deliveries. And then even in the second half of the year, they're going to finally start real deliveries. But even then, they're not even going to be used for real world commercial applications. They're going to be used for research and development services. So we are, even by the company's own admission, we are very far away from these Carnot generators actually being deployed in a commercial setting and creating economic value. Right now, they're still trying to get to get them to actually work and to be able to manufacture them properly. And then eventually, they hope to use them for research and development. And now let's get to the guidance. So they they claim that throughout the entire year of 2025, they expect to deliver a couple dozen Carnos. They also said that they're going to deliver, their plan is that by mid 2025, they will deliver 10 of the so-called early adopter units. And then by the second half of 2025, they hope that they can actually commercialize it so they can start doing um, real deliveries instead of just these fake early adopter deliveries. But even throughout the entire year, they only expect to deliver a couple dozen of these Carnos. And then they say that they expect to generate $10 to $15 million of revenue. But now let's get into what some of the disclosures they made about the revenue recognition. So they say that Hyliion will not immediately recognize revenue from early adopter sales. Revenue can only be recognized once Carnot is commercialized, hopefully in the second half of 2025. So these 10, so they delivered a few of these early adopter units, and they expect to deliver 10 early adopter units by the middle of 2025. But they cannot yet recognize the revenue on these deliveries because, as we said earlier, they are not real deliveries. In some cases, they have not even been delivered to the customer's premises. They are still at Hyliion's own facility undergoing further testing. So when the product is not yet ready, you cannot recognize any revenue. So basically what the whole thing is with these early adopter units is the technology isn't ready. They have, a customer who's interested in buying it, but the customer will only buy it if it actually works, and it doesn't yet work. So they're saying, "Oh, we have these things. We have these, Carnot units. They don't work now, or at least they don't work up to the standards now, and we're trying to figure out how to improve them." And then once we get them up, improved enough that they're actually meeting all of the specs that they're supposed to meet, then we will actually do a real delivery and recognize the revenue. But this has not yet happened yet. So Hyliion, they have delivered these so-called early adopter deliveries, but they have not yet generated any revenue from these Carnot generators because they cannot recognize the revenue for a product that is not complete. And then as far as the cash burn, so yeah, as they shut down their hybrid electric drivetrain business, which was a complete failure and generated substantially zero revenue, so they shut that down. And when they shut down that part of the business, they were able to lay off a bunch of workers, cut a bunch of costs. So they have indeed reduced their cash burn, and so their cash position actually looks pretty good. They have, they say that they're on track to burn $60 million in 2025. And they currently have $220 million of cash and equivalents. and financial bonds that they own. So they have effectively $220 million of cash. That at the current rate of cash burn, that gives them about 3.5 years of runway. So this is not a company that's imminently going to go bankrupt. They still have a lot of cash. But the question is, can they ever turn this Carno into a profitable business? And I think probably no. Now, first of all, even if they can make these deliveries as they claim, they're not going to be profitable. So in their own guidance, they say that they expect to get to gross margin neutral on a cash basis in late 2026. So they are admitting that whatever tiny number of Carnos that they might be able to sell in 2025, they expect to lose money. They expect to make a gross loss on those units. And then the idea is that eventually they're going to ramp up production and improve manufacturing efficiency. And then by the end of 2026, they expect to finally break even on a gross margin basis. However, the whole narrative that they're going to ramp up production and then somehow gain economies of scale and then eventually start making a gross profit, this is very questionable. And the reason why it's questionable is because in a normal manufacturing setting, you indeed get economies of scale, right? You have a production line, there's some fixed costs associated with the production line. As you ramp up to full utilization, you will indeed get economies of scale. However, Hyliion, they manufacture these Carno generators using 3D printers. Now, 3D printers do not have economies of scale. So one 3D printer, can only work so fast. Just say hypothetically, it takes maybe say you have one of these 3D printers, and it can create one Carno generator in a week. Okay, just as an example. Well, if you want to ramp up production, now you want to make 2 Carno generators per week. Well, you have to buy another 3D printer, and that's just going to double your costs. So when you have 3D printers, you do not get economies of scale as you do in the traditional manufacturing sense. Because if you want to ramp up production, you can't just increase the utilization of your existing printer. You have to buy more printers. So the narrative that they're admitting that with their current low level of production, they will lose money, negative gross profit. But I don't see any way that they could get to positive gross profit because you don't have economies of scale with 3D printing. And then finally, let's talk about their so-called, their supposed order backlog. They claim that they have a backlog of customer interest for 100 Carno generators. But this includes non-binding letters of intent, and non-binding letters of intent mean almost nothing because the potential customer, they have not even put down any deposit. They can walk away at any time um, at zero commitment. So non-binding letters of intent are almost always, are very often just BS. And let's look at one of them. So they claim to have 100 orders. In the most recent earnings call, Hyliion CEO spent a lot of time hyping up, they got one non-binding letter of intent from a data center company called Flexnode. And this is a pretty large percentage of their backlog because of the 100 of their backlog of 100 units, 20 of those are supposed to go to this Flexnode company. And Flexnode is a data center company, And recently, with all the AI and everything, there's a huge amount of investor hype around data centers. So, if a public, as the CEO of a publicly traded company, you want to hop on the bandwagon and say, "Oh, see, we're involved in data centers, so that's why we're going to be a huge beneficiary from AI and all that." But let's dig a little deeper into this Flexnode company. So Flexnode is a tiny company. According to LinkedIn, they have less than 50 employees. And importantly, Flexnode is not a data center operator. What they do is they make these racks. So here's a picture of one of the racks that Flexnode makes. So Flexnode makes these, big, metal boxes with racks on it that they sell these racks to actual data center operators. And then the data center operators can put their computers and servers or whatever into these racks that Flexnode makes. So Flexnode does not operate their own data center. They make these racks, which they supply to actual data centers. Now, the idea is that Flexnode would purchase these Carno generators, put the Carno generator into the rack, and then that Carno generator could supply electricity to the to power the data center, and then they would sell the rack with the Carno generator as kind of a complete package, which then they will sell to the data center operators. However, this is a non-binding letter of intent, and according to Hyliion's own admission, The customer LOIs that we've discussed are non-binding letters of intent that are subject to performance criteria and execution of binding agreements with customers. Similarly, the data center opportunity we discussed is contingent on successful performance and early deployment of the Carno generators. So this non-binding letter of intent from Flexnode, all Flexnode said is that, okay, right now the Carno generator, it hasn't even been tested. We don't know if it works. You have all these manufacturing problems that you are admitting to. Now, if you can get it to actually work and prove that it actually works and is actually legit, then we will consider buying 20 of them. But this is all, hypothetical. This is all very non-committal because it doesn't work yet. They're just saying that if it works, maybe we'll buy 20 of them. But what's the chances that Hyliion's actually going to be able to get them to work and to perform at the specs that they advertise? I think this is very unlikely given the company's disastrous track record. And talking about the track record, so before they were doing this Carno thing, they were, as we explained earlier, they were trying to do these hybrid electric drivetrains that you could, put onto you could get a regular truck, put install Carno's hybrid drivetrain and turn a regular truck into a hybrid truck. Now, this is an investor presentation that Hyliion released back at the end of 2021. So this was before the Carno thing and back when they were only focused on the hybrid electric drivetrains. So they bragged in their investor presentation that they already had orders for 100 of their 100 units of their hybrid electric drivetrain. So we got all these customers lined up is what they claimed. Well, they have not sold any of them. The business was a complete failure. I don't think they even sold like a single one, or if they sold an insignificant number, maybe even zero of their hybrid electric drivetrains, and the business was such a failure that they had to shut it down. Right. So the fact that you claim, oh, we have 100 orders. So now they're claiming that they have 100 orders for the Carno, which are all 9 non-binding letters of intent. But they also had 100 orders for their hybrid drivetrains. And that business completely failed. So why should we expect any different results? They're basically doing the same thing over and over again. And then why would you expect the results to be any different? This Carno business is going to be a failure, just like their hybrid electric drivetrain business, which was a complete failure. If anything, this Carno thing is even stupider. Again, watch our previous video where we debunk in great detail the absurd idea that this Carno generator would be able to generate electricity at less than the cost of the electrical grid. It's just, this whole thing is just absurd. And not only that, by their own admission, they can't even manufacture it correctly. And it doesn't even work up to the specs that they had claimed. And it still needs to be tested and validated. So they don't even have a finished product. They're struggling to try to make these. But even if they can make it, I do not believe that they can achieve anything like what the company said, like the idea that they could replace, they could be your prime power and replace the electrical grid. So this is basically like one of the most obviously failed companies. This is really the poster child of the SPACs. This came from this went public, I think, in 2020 at the height of the SPAC craze, where the stupidest companies could go public via SPAC, making all these outlandish promises. And now we're 5 years later, the company has failed to generate meaningful revenue, and they have now pivoted to a new business where they're running, the same, given the same bullish projections. Oh, we have this great new technology. We have all these non-binding letters of intent. Well, that's the exact same thing they said about the previous business, which failed, right? So this is, I think, Hyliion is one of the most obvious pieces of crap that has zero chance of success. Yeah, they have a lot of cash. It'll take them, 2-3 years before they run out of cash and go bankrupt. But the chance that this Carno generator can be a commercial success is, in my opinion, zero. So that about wraps it up for everything we had to talk about Hyliion. As always, if you have any opinions or thoughts about Hyliion, please let us know in the comment section below. And we will see you all on next week's video.